Okay, thank you. 14 slides, 25 minutes with questions. It'll be pretty quick. These are statistics. Can't do much to make them exciting. There's a little bit of interesting stuff when we start talking about transfers. So, I'm John Curran, President and CEO of ARIN, and this is the ARIN update. I would like the next slide. There we go. Okay. We still have IPv4 space. People are like, that's a surprise to some people. Someone actually asked me that. Aren't we out? No, we are not yet out. But yes, we're getting there very quickly. You can go to the ARIN webpage and check. It's always on the front page. Presently, it's 2.60/8 equivalents. So we are going through the inventory. I'll show you about the requests that are leading us to go through the inventory. This is updated every evening, so you can check the local news and then go to ARIN and see how much space is left. Okay, IPv4 address space requests. Now these are requests in 2012 for IPv4, both allocations and assignments. Allocations for ISPs and assignments for end user. These are requests. This doesn't represent the amount, just a ticket coming in. And you can see it's pretty steady over the year. It hasn't changed significantly one way or another. We're still getting requests and we're still processing them. Actual space issued. Now this is a little interesting. Obviously when we issue space as an allocation to an ISP, they get a lot more space than what ends up if we issue space to an end user under an assignment request. That's why these bars are predominantly dark blue, not light blue. And you can see that we're still issuing space. We still occasionally get very large requests. These bars are calibrated. It says requests on the side, but it's really number of /24 equivalents. And the numbers are actually below. So for example, in May of 2012, you can see we issued 27,000, the equivalent of 27,000/24s of space. So we are going through space. Some ISPs are coming back with very large requests. We will run out. It's very hard to predict when, because one large bar is more significant than the other 6 months on either side of it. So very hard to predict, as Mr. Houston has elaborated on in the past. IPv6, same thing, just lower numbers. As was pointed out in the prior presentation, we have a lot of people in the region using v4. We have an ever-increasing number, but still a relatively small ratio. So we receive requests from ISPs and end users for v4. They're fairly steady. We did see a little bit of push leading up until June of last year. People trying to catch up with one of the World IPv6 events, the World IPv6 launch day. And we've actually seen, even after that, after it dropped back down, we've seen a steady stream of increases in ISPs and end users, but it's you can see it's a very small line of increase. We don't expect to see any surge. We expect, as people get around to doing v6, for them to come in with their request. In terms of the, this was, let me be clear, this was allocation requests and allocations made. So the requests to us are in dark blue, and what we issued or requests that we approved were in light blue. This is the same thing for assignments, end users. And you can see this, as I said, the steady trend. We've seen a little bit of increase in end user requests for v6 after the beginning of this year. And we are issuing more, very slowly increasing. There was a big surge prior to World IPv6 Day. It dropped off, but now it's increasing again. But increasing is linear at best, not even geometric. Okay, IPv4 address transfer market. So this is interesting. We have IPv4 space available. ISPs and end users can request ARIN under NRPM and receive space. We also have a transfer policy, which allows a party to transfer space to a party that needs it. You wouldn't think there'd be a lot of transfers, because you have to pay someone for that, and that's actually often significantly more for just requesting space from ARIN. Having said that, we still see transfers going on, even before we've run out in the region. We're seeing transfers for two reasons. First one, bankruptcy related. When an entity goes bankrupt, it wants to value everything that it has put a price tag on every bit of it, move it out the door, and dissolve. So we see transfers as people get that valuation. Large underutilized blocks. Some folks have woken up and said, wow, I have 65,000 addresses for my community college of 600 people. I might have some unused space, or I have millions of addresses. I have 16 million addresses, and I can't conceive of us ever using more than 200,000. Some of the organizations that have very large, particularly classical assignments, are now showing up and saying, I've arranged to break it up and transfer it to other parties. So we are seeing transfers. They're all reported on the ARIN website. I'll actually show them on the screen here. A more recent development is inter-RIR transfers. I'll talk about that. And also ASN transfers. So IPv4, those are all the blocks that have been transferred. They're available at that URL every day. These, you can go look up the WHOIS record and see who they ended up with. If you put in a request to receive an address block from another party, we actually contact the other party. No matter who initiates it, we contact the other one. We make sure the request is valid. We say yes a lot of the time. But we say no sometimes. And people get upset when we say no. So I'm going to tell you in advance why we say no. Why do we turn down your request? If you try to transfer address space to a party that isn't actually going to use it, they don't have a need, they're not an end user or operator that can explain under the current policies how they're going to use the address space, then we deny them. I'm very upset. People come to us very upset. They say, John, I'm very upset. I don't understand why. I don't understand what ARIN's role is here. ARIN's role is to enforce the policies that you folks set, and those policies say it goes to parties with need. So you can move around address space, particularly to you folks who are running networks. If you try to move to address space to someplace that isn't, you'll find it doesn't work well. Request to transfer blocks by other than the actual registrant. Yes, we have this. I'm selling him an address block, but it's not mine. Oh, that's cute. That won't work. And sometimes this comes into a number of discussions of what is registered to you and what isn't. Some people do splits, mergers, acquisitions, and don't document all the details, leaving us some number of years later to stare at the asset purchase agreement and go, was the address included or wasn't it? It's not listed. We have a great time with this, gives us something to do, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the party that's actually transferring the block is the one that's the correct registrant. If you try to transfer a block and you're not the current registrant, we will first have to get it registered to you, then we can transfer it to someone else. I hope you understand why that makes sense. All of you who own automobiles don't want them transferred by people who don't own them. Same sort of thing. We can't let you transfer an address block until first you make sure it's in your name. Request to transfer block sizes smaller than minimum. Yes, we have had parties attempt to transfer a /32. There's no way under ARIN's policies to get assigned a /32 except for critical infrastructure, which we're not talking about, but people have tried to transfer a IP address, and we end up having to explain to people, doesn't work that way. If you couldn't have gotten assigned, you can't get it transferred. So you will get denied in that case. And requests for transfer of blocks larger than needed by the recipient. Transfer policy says 2 years worth of need. We look at your run rate. You can transfer up to that. If you try to transfer 10 years worth of need, we say, no, I'm sorry, the policies don't allow that. Okay, inter-RIR transfers. We now have inter-RIR transfers. ARIN has a policy, and APNIC has a policy which actually is corresponding to that. When RIRs have corresponding inter-RIR transfers, it's possible to do the same thing, only to another region. We've had 6 blocks all transfer to APNIC. Those are the dates of the transfers in the block. We've actually had parties inquire about transferring the other direction, which I find interesting. I didn't expect to see a lot of address space in APNIC, but occasionally there's blocks there that aren't being used, and there's parties here who might want to use them, and it can go either direction. But we've seen 6 go in that direction. Transfer facilitators. There are people who are good at finding people who need address blocks and are willing to pay for them. There are people good at finding address blocks that are underutilized who are willing to liberate them for money. This is not ARIN's job. The total extent to which we're willing to get involved here is to keep a list of them so we know where they are. We could tag them with RFIDs or biochips, but they didn't stand for that. We have a list of them, though, so we know where they are. They all agree to comply with ARIN's policies. You can get a hold of them. They're on the website. The URL is at the bottom. But you can also contact them On the website, you have phone numbers and email contact address. Feel free, if you're looking for a matching half of a transfer, to find one of those parties and they can help you out. Upcoming ARIN meetings. ARIN 31 coming up. It's going to be April 21st to 24th. It's in Barbados. Come on down to Barbados and enjoy yourself. Relax. It's all good, man. Hopefully no one will get upset with that. The next meeting we have is going to be even warmer. ARIN 32 in Phoenix, and that will be in October in joint with NANOG as usual. So we have two great meetings coming up. We hope to see you at those meetings. We're also, as you folks realize, doing public policy consultations at NANOG. So you have the ability to comment on policies. All the policies go up in front of these two ARIN meetings. Particular policies are brought by the AC to NANOG at the public policy consultations. So we'll be doing that upcoming in New Orleans, for example. There'll be a policy consultation. We may have some policies. But if you want to talk about all the address policies and all the changes being considered, either come and attend these or participate remotely. That's actually all I have, and I have time for questions. Oh, come on.
Questions for John?
You guys have a lot of questions when I'm not standing here, so let's try to get some of them out now. Yes, center microphone.
Lee Howard, Time Warner Cable. I'm very interested in the transfer market. I've done some investigation. I've talked to several folks who are parties in the market, and I've been trying to do a lot of research that I've been also trying to bring here and talk about. I wanted to ask you about a rumor I heard.
Sure.
Somebody suggested that the NSF said that you don't have to pay any attention to ARIN. And I said, that doesn't sound right to me, but I know who to ask.
Sure, that's actually a great thing to raise. So prior to ARIN's formation, there was a cooperative agreement called the INTRNIC. For those of you old like me, you remember that. It included the IP address management and the domain name addresses. Actually, originally included information services, and it was done by a bunch of people. Eventually, it ended up being done predominantly by Network Solutions. And in 1997, there was a decision that that would move out of the Internet contract and would be done by a community-based association, just as it's done in RIPE and ENIC. So we formed ARIN. The NSF said, you now should continue with this function, go forth and issue IP addresses. And we've been in formation since December 97. So someone wrote the NSF and asked, I don't know whether my rights can be affected by ARIN. I was issued addresses under your cooperative agreement, and how does ARIN apply? And the NSF General Counsel wrote back and said, we don't really see how anyone can affect your rights. You were issued addresses. So, consult your own attorney, but we don't see how this could affect you. Your rights could be affected after the fact. That was issued, it got some press, so on and so forth. Subsequent to that, I wrote a letter to NSF. It's actually on the ARIN website under the legacy agreement. If you go to the FAQ at the bottom, you'll see all the links to all this. And we pointed out that the statement of work for the Internet contract specifically referenced an RFC 1174, which said everything done under the Internet contract shall be subject to this RFC and subsequent RFCs that might be published from time to time by the IETF. Well, so if it turns out that that statement of work said that, and it was kind of overlooked by some people, the subsequent RFCs, like RFC 2050, are applicable. And in fact, RFC 2050 was adopted before ARIN was even around. And in fact, when it was adopted, it said it was a statement of how the INTRNIC issued address space, not how ARIN issued address space. And it actually changed the rights of everyone who had been issued address space prior. So this is all explained. There was also another little detail, I guess, which was important, which was that it's not the NSF's job at this point to talk about that. The Department of Commerce, NTIA, and the White House, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, are the lead agencies. And this was all pointed out to the NSF, and the NSF came back with a letter, which is also online, that said, yeah, not our job, we're sorry. Ignore what we said, thank you. Go talk to Commerce. And the Department of Commerce actually issued in December a statement on Internet numbering principles, which says they believe in the open and transparent, bottom-up, multi-stakeholder processes. They support the RIR system, and they support ARIN and the policies and procedures that come out of ARIN, and that we are the regional internet registry for Canada, US, and parts of the Caribbean. So there was a letter. It's since been amended by NSF, and then NTIA pretty much had to step in, and they sent out a very clear clarification. It's at this point, as we've said before, if your IP resources are registered in this region, they're in the ARIN database, the policies that you guys set apply to all those addresses. Long answer. Thank you for asking. Okay, over there. Right, Mike.
Dan McGinn, Pure One Networks.
Yep.
Just wanted to say that it's great that you're talking about all this IPv6 adoption, and one thing that's interesting to me is as I'm planning rolling it out to many sites, in IPv4, the minimum allocation is like a /24, and IPv6 /48. And yet I'm hearing, as I'm planning out building out my cities, I need to assign blocks of a certain size so that I can traffic engineer. What is the minimum size as a consensus from all of the operators that you're aware of that they will accept advertisements from? Because I've been hearing that certain providers like Verizon will only accept advertisements /32 or larger. I was wondering if you were aware of anything along those lines, or if there's a consensus, and then if anybody disagrees with what you say, feel free to come up and comment.
Sure. So I can tell you all about what address space you can get from ARIN as an end user and ISP. And end users are pretty simple. ISP a little more complicated. We talk about number of serving sites and the size of each serving site. And actually, the little help desk right outside that door has some very good people who will help you with that. But ARIN doesn't actually set policy on route filters. That's very much each operator's practice. And that's a good thing, not our job. So there's no consensus that I'm aware of on announcements or announcement filtering. I do know that because end users were receiving /48s, many people accept /48s for end users because you could get an end user coming to you who already has a prefix. But for ISPs, there's no convention to my knowledge. That's open, the best practices in that area are an open question and something that this room could discuss at some point, but not something set by ARIN.
Great. I was sort of leading into that. If anybody wants to say that they have anything that they have a filter that's must be bigger than /48, I'd love to hear from you about your reasoning. Thank you.
Senator?
Hi, Tony Tauber, Comcast. There's an interest in furthering the deployment of, or population at least, of the RPKI and starting to kick the tires with that whole system and doing some measurement and other things with the data. And apparently the relying party agreement has some legal verbiage that prohibits derivative works, and I don't know if it's FUD or just misunderstanding. So
no, it's very real. So let's see what we're talking about here. There is a relying party agreement at ARIN. The relying party agreement says that when you go and get our trust anchor link, which is the key you need to sort of decode our certificate authority, you have to actually click to acknowledge this relying party agreement. And it says you're going to decode the information, you're going to use it, you're going to pay attention to best practices and the RFCs for the RPKI system, but you're not going to share the data with someone else. We since have amended the RPA. The amended RPA says, feel free to share the data for statistical, summary, analysis, and similar purposes, okay? I'm not going to jump on Jeff Houston because he has a slide deck that talks about signed objects, or the Team Kumri, or anyone else. Warren, if you're out there somewhere, okay? We amended the agreement the moment it was brought to our attention that this might get in the way of doing reporting and statistics and summary. However, it's still applicable with respect to redistributing the information. And the reason for that is because a lot of parties need to make sure they understand the liability they're accepting if they process our PKI data and then they build a filter list in real time and share it with someone else. The party at the other end needs to understand the constraints on the whole system. And so we do not allow redistribution. We'd like them to go get the trust anchor and acknowledge the agreement, and that would solve the problem.
So the one thing that came up just recently was a presentation in the security track the other day where about some extensions, an idea to do some extensions in RPSL to put some statement about the validity of the route object and this kind of thing.
So, and I've actually heard of the work. So the thing to think about is, at the end of the day, a party that does that regeneration of information is in a sort of high liability situation. If they generate things incorrectly, they has consequences. If someone believes that their agreement with ARIN gets in the way and they want to set up a commercial service to do this, I am happy to have the discussion, and as long as they understand the implications of indemnifying us and accepting the liability of redistributing, then we can figure out a way to make that work. But I want to actually talk to someone who's legally responsible for the company and not someone doing a click acknowledgement on our website. So if you think you actually have a service that's in the way, come and contact me. The one or two people who have, after they talk to their legal teams, gone screaming into the night. So, but if you've got one, come talk to me. I'm happy to change it. We just want to make sure the company acknowledges what they're doing.
So if it were an IRR operator, they would have to do that.
We're happy to change it for an IR operator that knows they're accepting this liability, sure.
Okay.
Not trying to get in the way of this. We're just trying to make sure everyone who's using the data adheres to the IETF RPKI framework, which has very significant constraints on liability.
Thanks.
Yes, Lee.
Lee Howard, Time Warner Cable, is going to respond to the question about filters on prefix length. That I do not believe, as you said, that there is a consensus on appropriate length. Sounds like an outstanding question for best current operating practice. And if only there were, hey, wait, there is a forum where those sorts of things might be discussed. Bring it there.
Okay.
Last question. Microphones are closed
Yes.
after Sam.
Sam Weiler, Sparta. So you mentioned you'd be happy to talk about this with an IRR operator, except many of those are run by academic institutions and other folks where the folks running it may not be tied high enough up in the organization to actually accept liability, and that org may not really care on its own enough to accept the liability. This seems like it's getting in the way of cool operational reality.
The IETF framework for RPKI, for PKIX certificates, states that the party should recognize that the CP and CPS are not inherently binding agreements and that they should review the responsibilities and implications, and it's intentionally not a legal agreement. That would be something that they would accept as a relying party agreement. We're complying with the framework that was set up by the IETF. Okay? So if someone's actually making use of this data and isn't aware of the risks for their organization, that's actually not what RPKI was set up for, remember? I'd be happy to show you the link if you want.
So we could run down a nice little rat hole about this, which I am happy to do because I have a lot of concerns about this particular issue, but I don't think we want to do it right now with everyone here. We will be discussing this further on some of the mailing lists, the ARIN PPML, for example. We might discuss this, so this set of issues can definitely be brought up again, but we do have to move on. Thank you very much, John, and thank you for your useful discussion.
Thank you, everyone.